Hey guys, tonight we step into a world where the sand is hotter than your summer sidewalk. The air smells like frankincense and goat, and your morning starts with 20 servants bowing, while someone waves a giant ostrich feather fan at your face. You're a pharaoh of ancient Egypt, the living embodiment of Horus, divine ruler of the two lands, and, inconveniently, a human with very human problems, like mosquito bites, and diarrhea, and possibly being murdered in your sleep. You lie in a massive bed carved from cedar, imported from Lebanon by a guy who kissed your sandals last year. The linen sheets are stiff from the desert air, and there's this faint smell of resin lingering from the night oils. You hear the soft creak of sandals on stone your chamberlain has arrived to wake you. Except, of course, you never wake in the common sense. You rise. You are Ra reborn, you see. The sun rises because you allow it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video, and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shift beneath embroidered sheets, already sweating from the heat. Your first thought? That damned crocodile priest wants another goat, and maybe it's just you. But didn't the queen look a little annoyed yesterday? The gods may have given you a kingdom, but they also gave you relatives. Outside your palace, the morning starts with rituals that feel like performance art. Priests parade in, chanting to gods you can barely keep straight. One waves a lotus flower under your nose, another smears perfumed oil on your chest. Meanwhile, all you want is to pee in peace, but alas, divinity waits for no bladder. You're dressed before your feet hit the floor, sandals laced by trembling hands, pleated kilt adjusted just right, and gold collar heavy enough to correct your posture. Your face is painted with ground malachite for the classic green-eyed pharaoh look. Sure, it helps ward off sun glare, but mostly it makes you look fierce on the temple walls. Historical fact: Egyptian makeup was not just decorative, it had antibacterial properties. But try explaining that to your itchy eyelids. Breakfast? Honey cakes, goat cheese, beer, maybe a fig if it hasn't been poisoned. You are your food taster, a guy who used to be a potter until he won the world's worst promotion. He chews nervously, then nods. Good enough. You eat like a king because, well, technically you are one, but it doesn't mean the bread's not stale, or that someone didn't slip a scorpion into the kitchen. Again, you gaze out over your courtyard. The sycamores are blooming, and birds circle lazily over a reflecting pool that took 5 years and 20 deaths to dig. And yet, there's something deeply boring about it all. Like you've lived this day 1,000 times, which, in pharaonic terms, you kind of have. See, the average pharaoh didn't lounge all day like some ancient influencer. You had meetings, scrolls to review, land disputes to settle, tax grain to count. Your inbox was literally a man who recited things while sweating profusely. Historians still argue whether early pharaohs like Nama actually held full control, or were just figureheads for priestly factions. But you're firmly in charge on paper, at least. In practice, you're more like a CEO whose board of directors worships cats and occasionally sacrifices bulls for luck. You walk into the Hall of Offerings. It's quiet, save for the flap of a linen curtain. Your high priest bows deeply, muttering something about the temple's roof collapsing again. You nod sagely, as if you haven't already stopped listening. Your mind is elsewhere, specifically on last night's dream, where a baboon handed you a scroll that smelled like onions. Might be a prophecy, might be dinner-induced indigestion. A small boy with shaved head and gold amulet scurries to your side. He's your scribe's apprentice, and he whispers the day's omens. Good winds, low Nile, suspiciously quiet Nubians. You nod again. Very concerning. You say, though, you're mostly wondering if today's coal will smudge less than yesterday's Prosums 25. On your way to the outer court, you pass murals painted in ochre and cobalt scenes of you slaying enemies and farming grain. You haven't held a hoe in your life, but propaganda is eternal. There's even a depiction of you riding a chariot while holding a lion by the mane. That never happened. The lion was a house pet and extremely blind. Still, it makes for good PR. Quirky fact: some pharaohs kept exotic animals like giraffes and trained baboons as status symbols. There's even rumor one king tried to teach his baboon to play Senet, Egypt's version of board games. It did not go well. You pause before entering the audience chamber, the air heavy with the scent of lotus and uncertainty. You glance at the guards chosen not for loyalty, but for their lack of ambition. Fewer ambitions, fewer coups. A faint chant echoes from the hallway servants announcing your presence. You don't walk in, you glide, or at least, you try. Your sandals are stiff and the gold belt cuts into your side, but dignity must be maintained. You sit on your throne, a lion-legged seat too wide for comfort, and prepare to listen to a series of complaints about fish rites, stolen amulets, and some guy named Tepi who insists his cow is divine. You try not to yawn. You really do, because even Hots get bored. And honestly, that's the most disturbing part. You rule millions. You command armies. Your tomb will be a marvel of eternity. And yet, your days blur together ceremony, flattery, heat, repetition. There's no escape. Not even death will save you. Just wait till we get to the part about your intestines in jars. But for now, you sit, you listen, you nod, you pretend, and somewhere deep down, you wonder if maybe the palace baker is poisoning the beer again. You're still on the throne, your feet falling asleep, your ears assaulted by a courtier, describing the suspiciously rapid growth of his neighbour's fig tree, clearly the work of dark sorcery. You nod gravely, say something about consulting Thoth, and wave him off with the same hand you just used to scratch your ankle under the pleated kilt. Regal. By now, the morning sun is high enough to boil frogs on marble, and your face feels like it's melting. Fortunately or not, it's time for your daily cosmetic refresh. You're ushered back through the palace, past open archways where guards stand like statues, into the private quarters of the royal beautification chamber. This is the land of powders, paints, and people pretending they like touching your face for 3 hours straight. You sit on a stool of carved ebony, as your face is gently cleaned with natron water that smells like old mints and river slime. A woman in gold bangles applies a base paste to your cheeks. Then come the crushed beetles. Yes, beetles. Red ochre, courtesy of carmine insects, mixed with fat and dabbed lovingly on your lips. Quirky, right? And historically accurate. Pharaohs wore makeup not just for aesthetics or sun protection, but as part of ritual purity. Your eyes? Painted with thick black coal made from galena. It's heavy, it itches, and it runs when you sweat so all the time, really. Still, the look is iconic. Those sharp-lined eyes on statues, that's you. Or at least the ideal version of you. In real life, one sneeze and you look like a raccoon who lost a bar fight. As this goes on, 2 eunuchs file your nails. One hums a hymn to Hathor, the goddess of beauty. The other mutters about the new queen's 3rd cousin possibly being cursed. You sigh and adjust your headdress, Tode. It's the Neems, the striped cloth one you've seen on every Halloween costume. Except yours weighs 5 pounds and smells faintly of myrrh and pigeon. You glance into a polished bronze mirror. There you are, glowing, godlike, geometrically contoured. But even that can't hide the exhaustion behind your eyes. This morning alone, you've approved a grain shipment, denied 5 heresy trials, and pretended to care about the royal cat's diet. And now comes the real stress. Lunch with your extended family. You make your way to the inner courtyard, where shade is cast by tall palm trees and low expectations. The queen sits on a cedar bench, her gaze equal parts devotion and boredom. She's your wife. Also your half-sister. Maybe your full sister. Historians still argue whether Egyptian royal incest was purely symbolic or entirely practiced. But in your case, very practiced. Your mother-in-law/aunt joins the gathering, her gold jewellery clinking like chains. The prince arrives last, chewing lotus petals like gum. He's 9, already has a personal priest, and recently declared himself the chosen of Sobek. You're worried, mostly because yesterday he drowned a lizard and said it was a blood offering. Lunch is served. Flatbread, onions, lentil stew, a side of awkward silence. You pick at your food, watching your relatives pick at each other. The queen remarks on your eyeliner being smudged. You say nothing, but inside, you're thinking of exiling her to a smaller palace near the hippo-infested delta. Again, as everyone chews and pretends they like each other, the vizier arrives with scrolls tucked under both arms. He bows so low you worry he'll snap something. Land census results, he mumbles. You glance over the rolls. Numbers, lists, grain quotas. It's all very official and very, very dull. You sign them anyway, using a reed pen dipped in ink made from soot and gum. Your handwriting looks suspiciously like a hungover cobra, but no one questions it. After lunch, there's a family ceremony at the Temple of Isis. You're carried there on a golden litter, because walking is for mortals. Crowds line the street, throwing flowers, and occasionally babies. Symbolically, you wave. You smile. You feel sweat drip down your back into places sweat should not go. Inside the temple, incense burns thick enough to eat. You kneel, sort of, before the statue of Isis. The priest drones a chant that you suspect is just an ancient recipe for lentil porridge. Bells chime. The queen joins you for a fertility prayer, which is both public and deeply awkward, especially when she winks at the high priest mid-chant. The ceremony ends with the smashing of a ceremonial jar. It's meant to symbolize the breaking of worldly desires. You mostly think about the slaves who'll have to sweep it up. Back at the palace, you retreat to your private quarters. You need rest, but instead, you get more family. Your cousin stops by with his 5 sons, each with their own tiny crown and enormous sense of entitlement. They perform a dance. It lasts forever. You applaud politely, while imagining each of them falling into the Nile. Later, your astrologer arrives with a scroll soaked in oil and riddled with star maps. He says Mercury is weeping and Mars is thirsty. You nod. He says you should avoid papyrus and swimming for 3 days. You pretend to make a note. Still, there's an odd sense of unease. Maybe it's the family tension. Maybe it's the priest whispering that the queen's cousin is plotting something. Or maybe it's the scroll you received last night. Unsigned, unlabeled, but clearly threatening. It read, "The ibis watches," which could mean the god Thoth, or just a very aggressive bird. You try to dismiss it. You're the Pharaoh. You are divine. You wear gold sandals. Your toilet is made of alabaster. You are not afraid of cryptic messages and possibly carnivorous birds. But you still order a food taster for dinner, and maybe a guard to check your bed. Twice. As the sun sets in a molten blur over the Nile, you walk out onto your balcony. The wind carries the scent of silt and honey. In the distance, pyramids rise like teeth from the earth. They're not yours yet, but they will be, someday. For now, you just try to breathe in the cool night air and not think about the eyeliner melting down your cheeks like a sad, sacred clown. You are the most powerful person in Egypt, and your mascara is literally running your empire. The stars have come out, scattered like grains of barley across the sky, and the breeze off the Nile finally cools your sweaty neck. You lean on the balcony rail, arms heavy with gold bangles, and below you, torchlight flickers across the palace gardens. Somewhere, someone is playing a reed flute, terribly. You sigh. Tomorrow will be exactly the same, and that's the terrifying part. You're still dressed in full regalia, because now it's time to return to court for the evening audience. You trudge through echoing halls, sandals slapping stone, trying to hold your head at just the right angle to keep the beaded wig from slipping. It's not that it's heavy, it's that it itches, badly. There's probably a beetle in it. Again, the throne room is packed. Nobles stand in rows, eyes shining with reverence or ambition. You recognize maybe 4 of them. The rest are relatives, concubines, military men, or highly decorative people whose only job seems to be looking important near the pharaoh. You take your place on the gilded throne. It creaks. Or maybe that's your spine. A man steps forward. He bows low. He's wearing an absurdly tall wig and holding a carved staff. This is the Minister of Grain Distribution position, so dull it may actually qualify as torture under international law. He begins to speak, voice nasal and overly serious. Something about canal maintenance. You nod. Slowly, gravely, internally, you're counting ceiling tiles. This continues. One after another, officials present their urgent matters. The head of fish supplies reports an eel shortage. The keeper of sacred geese has questions about mating rituals. A merchant demands compensation for a shipwreck he claims was caused by a divine sneeze. You make a note to ban all meetings after sundown. Occasionally, someone flatters you. This is supposed to make you feel powerful. But after the 7th poem comparing your smile to moonlight on temple limestone, it mostly makes you feel tired and a little awkward, like a birthday guest of honor who forgot it was their birthday. Still, appearances must be maintained. You make pronouncements. You raise your golden crook, and flail a symbolic gesture meant to evoke fertility and dominion, though honestly, it just looks like you're scolding invisible sheep. Historians still argue whether the pharaoh truly ruled alone, or was more of a divine PR figurehead for the bureaucracy. In this moment, you feel very, very bureaucrat adjacent. When the audience finally ends, you stagger back to your private chambers. Not that private means much here. Even now, 5 servants bustle around preparing your evening, while a scribe documents your every movement like it's going in a scrapbook for Ra. You change out of your formal wear. Your new outfit? A finely woven linen night tunic that clings to your skin like a wet blessing. You lie down on a polished ebony bed with lion paw legs and headrest carved into the shape of Hathor's face. It is not comfortable. No bed in history has ever been comfortable when paired with a wooden headrest. Just as you're about to drift off, a servant tiptoes in with an urgent message. The general has arrived. You sit up, exhausted but curious. The military doesn't show up at bedtime unless something's either on fire or about to be. The general is bronze-skinned, broad-shouldered, and crucially covered in desert dust. He bows, then explains, there's been a border skirmish in the south. Some Nubian warband got ambitious and attacked a trading convoy. You rub your temples. Of course they did. You stand. Reluctantly, you make your way to the war chamber, where maps are unrolled, and markers shaped like hippos and falcons are used to represent troops. You lean over the table and try to look wise. What's our response? You ask, mostly to stall. The general suggests a show of force. A quick raid, maybe torch a few outposts to reassert dominance. You nod. Approved. But your stomach churns. Here's the thing. You're supposed to be a warrior. King. The heir of Menes. The conqueror of the 2 lands. Your statues show you smiting enemies like it's your favorite hobby. But in truth, you haven't wielded a sword in years. Your arms are soft. Your back aches when you bend too long over scrolls. And that last mock battle you attended? You passed out from heat stroke halfway through. Historical fact. While pharaohs were often depicted as fierce warriors, many likely delegated battles to generals, and merely posed for victory carvings later. And honestly, can you blame them? You order the general to prepare the troops. You mutter something about divine strategy, and hope it sounds convincing. The man salutes and leaves. You sit down, feeling very mortal. Later, in the bath chamber, you soak in a stone tub filled with lotus-scented water. Servants pour warm water over your shoulders. You stare at the ceiling and try not to think about soldiers bleeding in sand while you lounge among flower petals. One servant offers you a date. You decline. You've lost your appetite. That night, you lie awake for a while. You listen to the wind whistling through the palace. You wonder if other kings feel like this trapped inside their own image, revered by all, but known by none. Worshipped in public, ignored in private. Everyone calls you mighty, but no one asks if you're tired. You think about your father. He ruled for 34 years. His tomb took 2 decades to build, and he died just before the final stone was set. He told you once, during a festival, that ruling was a burden disguised as a crown. You laughed at the time. You're not laughing now. Just before sleep claims you, a thought slips into your mind, cold and sharp. What if all this, every pillar, every prayer, every statue isn't for the gods? What if it's just a very elaborate way of pretending you're not alone? Outside, the Nile flows steadily north, dark and vast, carrying secrets toward the sea. Somewhere downstream, a fisherman lights a fire. Somewhere upstream, a temple bell rings. And you, the living god, curl up on your side, eyelids heavy with eyeliner, and finally drift off wondering whether the ibis is still watching. You wake before sunrise, again, not because of duty or discipline, but because of a weird dream involving scorpions in wigs debating grain taxes. You sit up slowly, neck stiff from the wooden headrest, eyes crusted with yesterday's coal. Divine or not, sleep still plays by its own cruel rules. The chamber is dim. A servant silently lights an oil lamp, casting flickering shadows across the murals of your glorious conquests. Conquests that, let's be honest, mostly involved watching from a tent while your general did all the stabbing. You're helped into your ceremonial robes, today dyed deep indigo and embroidered with gold thread falcons. You notice a new amulet has been placed at your dressing table, a miniature Anubis carved from obsidian. It wasn't there yesterday. A gift? A threat? a subtle reminder from the priests that death is always taking notes. You sigh. It's time for another court ceremony, ritual of renewal. It's held monthly. The stated purpose is to restore the divine balance between Mart and the world. The actual result? Hours of standing still while people chant about how perfect you are. You can't feel your knees by the second hymn. You're carried by litter to the grand temple, where priests, nobles, and even foreign dignitaries are assembled. They bow as you descend, stepping onto an avenue lined with alabaster columns. The smell of incense hits you like a brick, sweet, spicy, and somehow always faintly resembling old onions. You approach the sanctuary. A dozen priests in leopard skin sashes surround you, their shaven heads glinting with oil. They lead you to the sacred platform where, tradition demands, you must recite 37 invocations to the gods without stumbling. If you mess up, the high priest politely insists on a full reset. Historical fact: rituals like the said festival involved elaborate declarations and symbolic acts meant to rejuvenate the pharaoh's power. Some were so long and formalized that they likely had prompters hidden behind columns. You begin to recite. Your voice echoes through the hall. You've done this many times, but there's always that nervous flutterwhat if you accidentally invoke the goddess of digestion instead of destiny. What if someone notices you're skipping every third line to save time? Halfway through, you spot a familiar figure among the watching crowd, your half-brother, the one who volunteered for a priesthood in Upper Egypt after his third mysterious scandal. He smiles, too widely. You make it to the end of the chant, just barely, and are handed a ceremonial scepter topped with a tiny hawk wearing a crown. It's heavier than it looks. Everything sacred is. You raise it high as music erupts, flutes, drums, and something that sounds like a cat being politely strangled. Next, you walk a slow circuit around the temple courtyard, symbolic of your eternal vigilance over the realm. In practice, a midday stroll in 38-degree heat, while trying not to pass out in front of your enemies. As you walk, the crowd tosses flower petals, and occasionally coins, though that's discouraged. You smile serenely, though internally you're counting how many steps until you can sit again. Your sandals are digging into your heel, and the gold collar is doing terrible things to your collarbone. At last, you're seated on a throne shaped like a lion sphinx. A priest steps forward to anoint your forehead with sacred oil. It drips down your face. You fight the urge to sneeze. You succeed, but barely. The ritual ends with the symbolic offering of the 9 bows, traditional enemies of Egypt, represented by painted wooden figures that are, well, tripped over, technically. You step on them as you exit. It's supposed to signify your dominance. Mostly it just feels like stepping on old action figures. Back in the palace, you return to the council chamber, where real problems now wait. A messenger from the east reports strange celestial activity, a comet maybe, or a rogue star. Naturally, the astrologers are freaking out. They think it's a sign. Of what? Opinions vary. One claims it's the return of a forgotten god. Another whispers about doom. A third just nods and suggests sacrificing a cow, just to be safe. You approve the cow. Always approve the cow. It's the pharaonic version of rebooting the system. Then come the tax reports. Scrolls upon scrolls of grain totals, fish counts, and a bizarre note about excessive frog sightings in the upper delta. You wonder briefly if you could just build another obelisk and distract everyone. Quirky tidbit. Pharaohs often erected monuments not just for legacy, but to redirect public attention. A bad harvest? Time for a shiny new column proclaiming your eternal greatness. The scribes drone on. Your vizier, who has the posture of an old broom, suggests a temple audit. That gets the priests twitchy. One clutches his amulet of Thoth a little tighter. You wave it off. You may be divine, but you're not stupid enough to pick a fight with the priesthood on a comet day. By mid-afternoon, you've had enough. You slip away to the palace roof gardenia, rare bit of solitude. Up here, the breeze carries the scent of lotus, basil, and a distant goat. You sit under a palm canopy, watching the boats drift along the Nile. And then, out of nowhere, you remember something. A childhood moment. You, barefoot in the mud, near the river, chasing frogs with your cousin, before the crowns, before the coal, before the sacred duties and secret enemies. You close your eyes, just for a moment. The sun warms your face, and for a second you're not Pharaoh, you're just a boy again, laughing in the reeds, believing the world is simple and safe. Then a servant appears, panting. "The Queen requests your presence," he says. "It's a family matter." You stand slowly. The gold glints on your arms. The linen rustles like dry leaves. You leave the garden, and your memory behind. Time to be divine again. You return to the palace, the hem of your linen robe stirring dust as you stride down the hall of painted gods. Each deity stares with serene detachment. Isis, Horus, Cetal carved long before you were born, all silently judging. You wonder if they laugh when no one's watching. The Queen's chambers are at the far end of the east wing, shielded by ivory doors and guarded by two men whose faces reveal absolutely nothing, which is a skill in itself around this family. Inside, the air is thick with perfume and politics. She stands by the window, arms folded, her long braids freshly oiled and gleaming. She doesn't greet you, just gestures to a scroll on the inlaid table between you. You already know it's bad news. You pick it up. The seal is cracked. The ink is smudged. It's a report scribbled hastily about a priest in Thebes. A popular one. Too popular. He's been speaking publicly about divine succession, questioning whether the gods truly favor your bloodline. Dangerous words. Treasonous, even. You glance at the Queen. She says nothing, but the flick of her eyes tells you she wants this handled. Swiftly. Historian debate time. Scholars still argue whether queens like Nefertiti or Hatshepsut had real political clout, or were ceremonial figureheads. You know better. You've seen her navigate feasts like battlefields, silencing enemies with a word, a smile, a well-placed rumor. You place the scroll down gently and nod. "I'll deal with it," meaning you'll send a scribe, maybe two, one to investigate, one to disappear if necessary, because in Egypt, faith is power, and power bleeds easily when poked. Back in your own chambers, you sit at your writing table, unroll a new scroll, and dip your reed pen in ink. The brush strokes wobble a little. You're tired, the kind of tired sleep can't cure. As you write instructions to your spy master, your mind drifts to your crown the shepresh, the ceremonial blue war crown, resting nearby. You only wear it during battle or festivals, but lately, it's been appearing more often. A statement, perhaps, or a warning. Speaking of headwear, here's your quirky tidbit for the night. Pharaohs had a variety of crowns, each symbolizing something specific. Upper Egypt, Lower Egypt, divine authority, military power. The catch? No one really knows how they stayed on. There's no strap, no clip, maybe divine suction. Just as you sign the scroll, a servant enters with news. A foreign emissary from the Hittites has arrived. Early, without warning. You groan. That can only mean trouble or marriage negotiations, possibly both. You rise, wrap yourself in a sheer ceremonial robe, and head for the receiving hall. The air here smells like cedar and sweat. The emissary, a tall man with a beard braided in gold rings, bows deeply. His Akkadian is thick, but his meaning is clear. His king offers peace, and a daughter. You resist the urge to groan again. It's the 5th marriage proposal this season, and your family tree is already shaped like a very confused snake. Still, you listen, smile, nod. The formalities must be observed. Egypt's strength isn't just in its armies, it's in its image. The illusion that everything is under control, that your kingdom stretches from the sea to the desert, and that your bloodline will last forever. After the emissary leaves, your vizier pulls you aside. He whispers about whispers. Always whispers. The priesthood is stirring. The nobles are uneasy. There's talk of famine if the Nile doesn't rise next month. And the comet? Still glowing. Brighter now. People are staring at it like it's a divine memo from the gods. You dismiss him gently, then wander into your personal libraria quiet room, lined with papyrus scrolls. You trail your fingers across the spines of documents filled with spells, star charts, poems, some of them written by your ancestors, others less flattering, possibly forged by jealous scribes. You sit and read for a while, choosing a scroll about dream interpretation. Last night's vision of scorpions keeps coming back. You find an entry. To dream of scorpions is to fear betrayal from within. Great. You put the scroll away and lean back, watching the oil lamp flicker. Your face is reflected in a bronze plate nearby. The coal under your eyes is smudged. You look less like a god, and more like someone who hasn't had a real conversation in weeks. And that's when it hits you. You're surrounded by hundreds of people, guards, servants, family, scribes, but no one speaks to you. They speak to the crown, to the myth, to the version of you etched in stone. Not the man, never the man. You close your eyes, just for a moment. Then someone knocks. It's your son, the prince, 9 years old, newly obsessed with mummification and carrying a frog in a tiny basket. He climbs into your lap without asking and plops the basket between you. His name is Osiris, he says. The frog croaks, loudly. You smile, in spite of yourself. The boy starts asking questions. Why do stars fall? Why do people die? Why do you wear eyeliner if you're already handsome? You laugh. You answer. For the first time all day, you're not acting. He eventually falls asleep against your chest. You sit there, crown set aside, frog blinking up at you in the lamplight, and for a few precious minutes, you forget about scrolls, crowns, spies, and omens. Just a father, just a boy, and one very judgmental frog. Dawn slinks in again, painting the palace walls a dull gold as the Nile whispers to itself outside. The boy is gone escorted back to his wing by quiet servants. The frog, somehow, has been promoted to a spot on your writing table, watching you like a papyrus critic. You rub your eyes and rise slowly, knees cracking like ancient scrolls. No time for ease today. You're off to the edge of the city inspecting troops. It's been weeks since the Nubian skirmish, and your general insists the army needs inspiration. By that he means they want to see you stand dramatically in the sun while people scream your name. Fine, you can do that. You leave the palace in full military regalia, every piece of it designed to say, I could smite your village in a heartbeat but tastefully. The Keprish crown gleams atop your head, held in place by divine mystery and 3 very discreet pins. A gold and leather cuirass tightens across your chest, cinching your lungs into what historians might call a battle hug. You mount your chariot, pulled by 2 impatient white horses whose names you've never remembered. Probably something poetic like wrath and justice, but more likely kick and poop. The sun is already roasting the earth when you reach the training field. Dust swirls in lazy spirals, kicked up by rows of soldiers moving in synchronized patterns. Spears shimmer like reeds in the heat. Your arrival is announced with horn blasts and, naturally, excessive bowing. You dismount, land stiffly, and try to look both approachable and terrifying. The general meets you, face tight with sweat and reverence. He leads you along the ranks, pointing out improvements, better formation discipline, newer shields, fewer men fainting from sunstroke. All good signs. One soldier collapses as you pass. Heat exhaustion. He's dragged away discreetly. You pretend not to notice, but the image lodges itself in your mind. You've never seen battle the way your generals have. Your campaigns were brief, ceremonial marches followed by treaties. You posed on chariots. You held swords for paintings. But actual war? Muddy, smelly, chaotic? You've only seen it from the clean side of the tent flap. Historical fact, not every pharaoh led in battle. Some like Thutmose III were brilliant tacticians. Others, like Akhenaten, barely left the palace. Their legacies were shaped more by art than action. You reach the archery demonstration. A line of archers takes aim at painted target human silhouettes marked as enemy. They fire. Half the arrows hit. One strikes a wooden post and explodes into splinters. You clap, politely. The general suggests you fire a few arrows yourself. A photo op, ancient style. You accept the bow, grip it with soft ink-stained hands, and draw back. The string trembles. You release. The arrow arcs beautifully and misses the target completely. It buries itself in the dirt, where a beetle flees for its life. You clear your throat. Try again. The second one grazes the edge. The third actually lands in the target's painted gut. Cheers erupt. You're pretty sure they were ordered to cheer regardless. Still, you raise your hand in solemn victory. Somewhere, a scribe is already composing a poem about your unmatched skill. After the exercises, you address the troops. Your speech is short, just long enough to mention courage, honor, the gods, and something vague about fighting for the heart of Egypt. Then you're back in the chariot, sweat dripping down your back, sandals full of sand, cheeks aching from forced nobility. As you ride back through the city, people line the streets to shout blessings and requests. One woman throws flower petals. Another screams about a stolen goat. A child runs up with a crude clay figure of you and asks you to bless it. You nod solemnly, touch it gently. The kid beams like you handed him the moon, and for a flicker, you feel real. Not the God King, not the divine puppet, just a man trying to keep a million lives from crumbling. You return to the palace, strip off the armor, collapse into a lukewarm bath scented with chamomile and disappointment. The servants bring a meal grilled fish, cucumbers, figs, and a clay cup of beer strong enough to sterilize surgical tools. While you eat, your mind turns again to your military. They're strong, loyal for now. But you've seen enough history, and enough betrayed statues in ruined temples, to know loyalty is fragile. What happens if the river dries? If the crops fail? If the comet brightens one more inch? You summon the general later that evening. You ask him casually how many of the southern border troops are true-born Egyptians. He hesitates before answering, "Less than half." You nod. As expected. You make a note to shift a few deployments. Keep the native-born closer to the capital. Not a coup prevention move exactly, but let's say it's spiritual insurance. Quirky tidbit for today. Egyptian soldiers were often rewarded with land grants, not just as pay, but as a clever method of anchoring their loyalty harder to revolt against the system when you own a slice of it. That night, you host a banquet. It's not your idea, of course. The Queen insisted. Apparently, a visiting prince from Cyprus needs entertaining, and nothing says diplomacy like overcooked lamb and harp music. The banquet is loud, over-decorated, full of fake laughter and real gluttony. You sit at the head of a long alabaster table, flanked by relatives who keep trying to one-up each other with stories about crocodile wrestling and dream omens. The prince, barely 17, dressed like a jewel box, keeps giggling into his wine. He asks you how many wives you have. You lie. He asks how many pyramids you've built. You also lie. You make it through the night. Barely. At one point, your cousin stands up and starts reciting a poem about your sky-coloured eyes and your laughter that melts bronze. You excuse yourself before the part about your ankles of justice. You end the day on the balcony, alone again. The city is quiet. The Nile glistens like a ribbon of melted obsidian. You look up. The comet is still there, brighter, watching, just like everything else. Morning begins before you're ready. Your eyes open to that now familiar murmur of servants, the wafting scent of resin and lotus oil already filling your chambers. Today, though, there's an unusual edge to it all. The palace feels more like a construction site than a sanctuary, and you remember why. Today, you tour your tomb. Yes, your tomb. Because nothing says rise and shine like visiting your future death apartment. You're helped into a more modest outfit by Pharaoh standards anyway. Still gold-trimmed, still linen, but loose enough to breathe. You wear only one amulet today, a carved piece of lapis lazuli meant to protect the soul in transit. Just in case, you think dryly. You depart the palace with a small entourage. No trumpets this time, no chariots, just a pair of ox carts carrying supplies and one surprisingly talkative architect. The man chatters about limestone consistency and ceiling height ratios like he's explaining the god's own IKEA. Your tomb in progress sits carved into the cliffs of the Valley of the Kings. From afar, it's a slash in the mountainside. Up close, it's a cathedral of echoes, dust, and dread. The tunnel extends down into the rock, cool and dry, despite the sun blazing above. The deeper you go, the more the light disappears until you're just a flickering torch and a collection of nervous footsteps. 20 more cubits, says the architect, pointing at a blank wall. Then we begin the burial chamber. His voice trembles slightly. Whether from reverence or the increasing rumor that curses are a construction hazard is unclear. Historical fact: Egyptian tombs were often built over decades, beginning early in a pharaoh's reign. They were constantly expanded, altered, and sometimes even hidden to avoid tomb raiders, which, spoiler, rarely worked. You walk the passage in silence. The walls are half-carved, half-painted, full of scenes from your future afterlife. You slaying serpents, you sailing with Ra, you standing before Osiris, hopefully with a heart light enough not to be eaten by Amit. Your artists are skilled, the colours pop, the symmetry's divine, but what catches you isn't the art, it's the space. It's how small it all feels. Not the chamber, but the fact that this is where you'll end. You, the living god, master of two lands, reduced to resin, linen, and a few cartouches. The architect proudly points out where your canopic jars will rest. You nod politely. He doesn't mention which of your organs goes where. You already know. You reach the deepest chamber. It's still being carved. The stone walls raw, tooth-marked by copper chisels. A low pile of rubble sits in the corner, next to a worker passed out in the shade. You glance around the room meant to hold your eternity, and feel underwhelmed. It's large, yes, but it's not the size. It's the finality. This isn't a monument to glory. It's a storage room for bones. You suddenly understand why every pharaoh tries to outdo the last. It's not legacy, it's fear. If you build something massive enough, complicated enough, maybe death gets lost trying to find you. You step outside, blinking into the sun. The cliffs tower above. Your priest approaches, offering you a sip of sacred water. You take it. It tastes like copper and age. The ride back is quiet. You return to the palace and immediately summon your tomb designer. He's a nervous man with scrolls for hands and sweat rings under his eyes. You tell him you want more chambers, a false burial shaft, hidden doors, something that confuses even jackals. You say. He bows low. Yes, Divine One. Of course, but it will require more workers. You sigh. That means more grain, more copper tools, more complaints from the treasury, but you nod anyway. Later that evening, you walk the palace halls alone, trailing your fingers along painted walls. You stop at a mural showing your father on a throne, surrounded by stars and symbols. Below him, a tiny figure kneels you. As a boy, you don't remember that day, but the artist remembered it for you. You head outside, where the western sky burns red and orange. The Nile shimmers in the last light, and you stand there a long time just watching. A servant interrupts gently. A delegation from Memphis has arrived. You mutter something about bad timing but turn anyway. Duty never ends, not even at sunset. The Memphis nobles are rich, perfumed, and annoying. They argue about taxes, temple repairs. One wants permission to mint coins with your face on them. You're tempted, who wouldn't want to spend themselves on the open market, but you decline. Too risky. Too many fakes already out there. You dine with them out of obligation. The food is good lamb with honey, cucumbers soaked in wine, dates stuffed with almonds. You barely taste it. Someone jokes about your tomb, says they heard you're building a maze so complicated even your spirit will get lost. Everyone laughs. Except you. You excuse yourself early, claiming a headache. Back in your chambers, you remove your crown, your rings, your sandals. You stand barefoot on cold stone, staring at your reflection in a polished obsidian mirror. You touch your own face. It feels thinner than before. You turn to the little frog. Still there, still judgmental. You sigh and whisper, "Don't look at me like that." Then you lie down, wrapped in linen sheets, and you dream not of gods or glory, but of stone walls closing in. The heat wakes you before the sun does, a slow, cloying warmth rising from the palace stones like the breath of a sleeping beast. You sit up in bed, groggy, your linen sheets tangled around your legs like the coils of Apep, the chaos serpent. There's already a scratchy feeling behind your eyes, the sign of a day that's going to go wrong before it goes right. If it ever goes right. Today's itinerary? Pest control, plagues, and pyramid problems. A true king's feast of headaches. You barely finish dressing when the first report comes in. Grain stores in the lower delta have been infested. Again, the royal granary inspector, a man whose job you suspect is cursed, delivers the news with a sweaty scroll and an expression like he swallowed a scorpion. "We think it's rats this time," he says. You raise an eyebrow. "This time?" He hesitates. "And some. Beetles. Possibly frogs." Beetles. Frogs. It's starting to sound biblical. You send a messenger to the priests. Maybe it's a sign. Maybe just another week in the kingdom of eternal order. While you're still chewing on that delightful news, the High Builder bursts into the throne room like a brick through a window. "My lord," he says, almost tripping over his own sandals. "There's been a collapse in the southern pyramid shaft. 2 workers are injured. 1, possibly dead." You rub your temples. Of course there's been a collapse. Why wouldn't there be? Your pyramid meant to outshine your father's is already behind schedule. The limestone blocks keep cracking. The overseers are demanding more beer. And the workers? Well, they're beginning to whisper. Quiet things. Restless things. You head out to the construction site in Giza, under armed escort. though not for protection from the sun mostly. Even wrapped in sheer linen and shaded by a team of parasol bearers, the heat is cruel. It peels the land like fruit. The pyramid looms in the distance, a squat, stubborn mound of stone and ambition. 100 men swarm its surface like ants, hauling sleds, laying bricks, chanting work songs between coughs and curses. You pass by them all, nodding where needed, receiving bows like currency. Their eyes say admiration, their backs say resentment. At the base, the shaft is roped off. Dust clouds linger like ghosts. 2 men lie nearby under blankets. One groans softly, the other does not. You kneel beside them, just long enough to be seen, to be remembered. You mutter a prayer to Anubis, though your voice feels hollow. Then you rise, ordering an extra portion of grain for the families. Quirky tidbit. Pharaohs often gave modest rewards or burial privileges to families of dead workers, not out of charity, but to prevent rebellion and feed loyalty. It was divine PR, polished with blood and bread. The overseer meets you at the entrance to the central shaft, voice trembling. It's the angle of descent, Majesty. The rock is softer than we expected. The gods may not want this design. You look at him. The gods don't lay bricks. Fix the angle. He bows, deeply. But you know, he's just bought another week of excuses. Maybe 2. As you walk back through the camp, you hear whispers. The curse, one worker mutters. The curse of the unfinished tomb. Another blames the comet again. A third just mumbles something about scorpions in sandals. Historians still argue whether pyramid collapses were common or covered up. What they don't argue about: the sheer weight of royal pressure to finish something impossible before death caught up. Back at the palace, you wash in lotus-scented water, the grime and sweat peeling off like old stories, but the weight doesn't lift. You eat lunch alone: lentils, cucumbers, pomegranate seeds. Halfway through, your food taster coughs twice and goes pale. You stare at your fig, then at him. Just a dry throat, he croaks. You set your fig down anyway. You're not in the mood for drama. The Queen sends a message mid-meal. There's unrest in the eastern villages. Farmers are demanding a second irrigation channel. Priests claim this would offend Hapi, god of the Nile. You write a decree. It says, build the canal, bless it, blame the vizier if it floods. Problem solved. Except it never is. That afternoon, the astrologers request an audience. They arrive in robes of midnight blue, stars embroidered in silver thread, and expressions like people who've seen doom and ask it to tea. The comet, one whispers, has changed direction. You raise an eyebrow. And it now aligns with the heart of the crocodile constellation. You blink. Which means, a different priest, younger and annoyingly enthusiastic, says, it means Sobek is hungry. You pause. For what? The priest's voice lowers. Sacrifice. You groan. Not another festival. Not more goats. But the pressure is real. People see the sky. They need to see action. They need to believe the gods are in control even, if it's just you in a crocodile mask, waving a knife at a fruit basket while a hippo bellows approval. You approve the ritual. 7 goats. 3 bowls of lotus wine. No human sacrifices. You're civilized after all. By sunset, the festival is in motion. Drums pound, torches blaze, priests chant, and dancers swirl like reeds in floodwater. You sit on your elevated throne, crown heavy, wine heavier. The people cheer. The comet glows like a divine torch. And yet, you feel small, surrounded by gold, by music, by praise. Your mind drifts to that worker's blanketed body, to the crack in the pyramid shaft, to the way your food taster's hands shook, to the dream you had last night, a staircase that never ends, lined with jackals, each one staring with your own face. Later, alone in your chambers, you stare at the torchlight on the wall. It flickers, casting shadows of crocodiles and kings. You reach for the frog. He's still watching. Maybe you were a priest in another life, you whisper. He croaks once, as if to say, that would explain everything. You lie back and dream of sand collapsing under your feet. You awaken to the sound of chanting, low, rhythmic, insistent like distant thunder trapped in the walls. You sit up in bed, heart beating a little too fast, and blink into the gloom of your chamber. The light is strange, dim, wrong. It's well past sunrise, but the palace feels stuck in twilight. A servant enters, pale as milk. "My lord," he whispers, "the high priest requests your presence." He says, "The gods are speaking." You've heard that phrase before. It never means anything good. You dress quickly today. Plain robes and only a single amulet, the one shaped like an ankh. You reach for the crown, but stop halfway. Number not today. You leave it on its alabaster stand, looking absurdly regal and utterly irrelevant. The temple corridors are colder than you remember, or maybe it's just your skin reacting to what's coming. The walls echo with incantations. Priests in leopard skin cloaks surround the central hall. Smoke curls from burning incense ekifi, a blend so potent it could cleanse memories. In the center stands the high priest, face hidden behind a mask of Thoth, ibis-beaked and solemn. He bows low as you enter, then gestures to a stone bench. You sit, slowly. He begins to explain slow, measured tones, like he's telling a bedtime story to someone holding a sword. You listen. It's the dreams, not just yours. Everyone's. Priests, nobles, even commoners, all dreaming of floods, of flames, of gods with empty eyes. And always a voice saying, "Cleanse the fire, or the kingdom burns." You frown. And what does that mean? The priest hesitates, then says it. "There's impurity in the palace." You stare at him. Meaning? The gods require a cleansing, a ritual of purgation. Ah, of course, a cleansing. Nothing fancy, just a multi-day ceremony involving fasting, fire, and potentially someone being flayed metaphorically or literally, depending on the mood of the gods. You sigh and wave him on. "Do what must be done," you say. But you don't like it. Not on a bit. Historical debate. Scholars still question how much actual power high priests held over pharaohs. Some say they were advisors. Others say they pulled the strings behind the golden throne. You? You know exactly how much power they have, just enough to be dangerous. Back in the palace, the cleansing begins. The courtyards are flooded with chants and smoke. Priests walk barefoot through every chamber, sprinkling natron water, marking doors with chalk symbols. They even cleanse your sandals, which feels excessive. You try not to flinch when one tosses salt at your feet, like you're a misbehaving demon. That afternoon, your son comes running into your study, wide-eyed. "They threw ashes on my frog." You pause. Blink. "What?" "The priest said he might be cursed," the boy says, cradling the damp, unhappy amphibian. "But I told them he's just sad-looking." You smile. Maybe the first real smile in days. "Good," you say. Always question the men in masks. He grins. "Even you?" You chuckle. "Especially me." Later, after nightfall, you dream again. This time, it's a garden. The same garden you played in as a boy, except the trees are all burning. And under the ashes, your name, carved in stone, being scrubbed away by invisible hands. You wake with a start. Chest tight. Room dark. There's a knock. It's the queen. She enters. Expression unreadable. Her hair is braided back, her robe simple, and for once she looks not like a deity carved in marble, but like a person. She speaks quietly. "There's more," she explains. "Someone's been bribing scribes, rewriting temple records, adjusting dates, skipping offerings. All of it subtle, hidden, until the dream started. She suspects one of your cousins, or a noble from the east, maybe both." You sit in silence. You don't ask how she knows. She's always known things. She's the storm beneath your calm. You ask her what she wants. She looks you in the eye. A public trial. No more whispers. You hesitate. A trial means attention. A spotlight on your court. People watching for signs of weakness. But refusing her means letting the rot grow beneath the gold. You nod. Slowly. She leaves. You pour yourself a small cup of wine. Thick. Spiced. Heavy with clove. As you sip, you think about power, about how it seeps, leaks, splinters, not in grand battles or thunderclaps, but in little lies, small edits to truth, a missing goat, a dream unspoken, a scroll burned in secret. Quirky tidbit. Some Egyptian priests recorded dreams as sacred texts, literal communiques from the gods. Others believed bad dreams meant possession, often recommending garlic baths or sleep in the temple for a week. You briefly consider both. The trial is set for 2 days from now. Public. Ceremonial. Theatre, really. but the outcome must be real. And suddenly you realize you're afraid, not of curses, not of betrayal, but of the day after the truth. What happens if the impurity is deeper than one cousin? What if the whole temple needs cleansing? And worse, what if it's you? You lie down beside the boy, who's fallen asleep mid-sentence, frog on his chest, snoring softly. You place your hand over both of them, and whisper a prayer you haven't said in years. If the gods are watching, let them be kind. The next morning the palace wakes in a hush. No musicians play in the courtyard. No scented oils are prepared for your bath. Even the parrots in the garden seem muted, as if they too are waiting. Today is the trial public, symbolic, yet packed with consequences sharp enough to bleed. You eat a sparse breakfast, a single loaf of barley bread, a few olives, no wine. You want your mind clear, sharp. Heavy gold bangles are clasped around your wrists, and your headdress is set just right, so that you cast the longest possible shadow. You are Pharaoh. You must look like it, even if you don't always feel like it. The court assembles at the Great Hall of Justice. White stone columns line the chamber, their carved falcons seeming to lean in, listening. The ceiling is high enough for echoes to get lost, and your voice, when it comes, will have to rise like thunder to be heard. Your cousin is already there. He kneels before the bench, head lowered, flanked by two guards who pretend not to hear the muffled insults he hisses at them. The high priest stands beside you, maskless today. His face is clean-shaven, unreadable, carved in marble patience. He intones the charges, falsifying temple records, accepting bribes, interfering with sacred rites, invoking divine favor for personal gain. It's a long list. Your cousin doesn't deny it. He simply says, "I did what was necessary. The gods are not always right." Gasps ripple through the room. One woman faints dramatically. Your lips press into a line. You don't ask for clarification. You don't need it. You know what he means. Because deep down, you've thought it too. You deliver your sentence with a voice that echoes beyond the columns. Banishment to the far south, to a minor outpost where the Nile runs shallow and the sand eats ambition. No death. That would make him a martyr. Just silence and distance. He's dragged away. The hall empties. And still, you sit, because now the real trial begins and you're the accused. Not in law, but in soul. Historians still argue whether pharaohs were believed to be fully divine or merely chosen. In your bones you know the answer. The people need to believe. You don't doubt it. Ever. But that belief doesn't leave space for mistakes, or exhaustion, or regret. You return to your chambers. The boy is waiting there, seated cross-legged on the floor, building a tower of smooth stones and whispering something to the frog. He looks up at you, sensing the weight you carry. "Was it hard?" he asks. You nod. "Are you still king?" Another nod. Then he goes back to his stones. That evening, you walk the palace grounds, alone. No guards, no servants. The air is cool. The stars seem brighter than usual. The comet still lingers, now with a faint green hue, like the gods dipped a brush into madness and smeared it across the sky. You wander to the sacred lake behind the temple. Its surface is still, too still. You crouch beside it, cup water in your hands, and see your face reflected back, tired, thinner, the lines around your mouth no longer hidden by eyeliner. You whisper your own name, just once, like testing whether the world still listens. It does, but barely. The priests approach again the next day. More dreams, more omens. This time, a proposal, a cleansing rite for you, public, ceremonial, and just subtle enough to seem voluntary. You agree, because you know what they're doing. They're reminding the people that even pharaohs must be purified. That order, march, requires humility, obedience, even from gods. Quirky tidbit. Some Egyptian rulers willingly participated in mock humiliations during festivals, where they were stripped, symbolically scolded, even spat upon all to reset the cosmic balance. An ancient version of divine PR damage control. The ritual takes place at dawn. You walk barefoot into the temple's inner court, robes exchanged for simple linen. No gold, no crown, just you, and a basin of bitter-smelling water steeped in desert herbs. The high priest pours it over your head. It stings your eyes, your scalp itches, your pride smoulders. Then the chants begin. You are named, not as king, but as man. Your full name, all 8 royal titles, spoken aloud, followed by the phrase, "May he return to harmony." They say it 3 times, then silence. Just your wet feet on stone, walking back toward the palace as the sun lifts behind you. Later that night, the queen sits beside you. She says nothing for a while, just sips wine and watches the moon rise. Finally, she speaks. "They believe in you again." You shake your head. "They believe in the idea of me." She smiles. That's all any king ever gets. And somehow, that comforts you. The boy sneaks in again just before bed, curls up at the foot of your mattress, frog and all. He's asleep in seconds. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling. You dream again, not of burning trees or collapsing stones, but of a single white lotus drifting down the Nile, unbothered, unburned, endless. Another day, another scroll announcing the end of the world. This one arrives at breakfast rolled tight, sealed in wax shaped like a lion's paw. The messenger bows so low you're afraid he might dissolve into the floor. You break the seal, unroll the papyrus, and scan the contents with the sinking sensation of someone who already knows they won't like the ending. It's from the border post at Buhen. A merchant caravan has vanished. 50 men, 20 camels, gone. No survivors, no bodies, just shredded tents and scattered jars. The only clue? A series of strange carvings near the riverbank images of jackals and upside-down ankhs. Either the work of bandits with flair, or something else. You close the scroll. You don't sigh. You've used up your sighs this month. You summon your scribe and dictate a reply. Dispatch scouts. No soldiers yet. Say it's a survey. Panic is a luxury for lesser kingdoms. You spend the morning in your audience chamber. Not because you want to, but because there are too many people waiting to bow and say, "Great one," before complaining about irrigation, crocodiles, or both. You listen, nod, answer in phrases short enough to be immortalized in stone. One woman begs for a burial plot for her husband, who died pulling stones for your pyramid. You grant it, not out of kindness, but because the optics are good. Let it be known the Pharaoh honors the humble dead. Around noon, your physician arrives. He smells like onions and palm resin, always has. He bows, eyes shadowed, fingers twitching with unspoken warnings. He's brought a sample of the water from the Western well Smirky, thick, tinged with something that should never be green. You swirl it in the bowl he offers. It clings to the sides like old paint. "People are falling ill," he says. "Too many. Too fast." You raise your gaze. "Is it poison?" He hesitates. "Is it punishment?" He shrugs. "Or prophecy?" "Great." Historians still debate the origins of Egyptian plagues, whether natural, symbolic, or exaggerated by later writers. But you don't need debates. You need clean water, and priests who stop whispering every time you enter a room. You send orders to boil every drop, ration the supply, burn the tainted reeds. You suggest a ritual. Number require one. Let the priests wave their feathers and chant until the air is heavy with hope. In the afternoon, your son brings you a drawing. It's a simple papyrus sketch. You, standing in a boat, arms raised, the stars above you shaped like tiny frogs. He's labelled it, "Papa defeats the sky." You smile and ruffle his hair, but inwardly, you feel the opposite, like the sky is pressing down, heavier by the day. That night, you sit with your architect. You're redesigning the burial chamber. Again, new measurements, tighter seals, a false door that leads to nowhere. He shows you a layout with a secret passage that loops back to the entrance. A serpent biting its tail, he explains. You approve it, not because it's brilliant, but because it feels right. You ask him quietly, "How long would it take to seal me inside?" He blinks. "I mean, when the time comes." "Not long, great one," he says. "A day. Less, with warning." You nod, then add, "No gold, just stone, and leave my name off the walls." He stares at you. You don't explain. Quirky fact. Some pharaohs deliberately erased the names of predecessors they hated or feared. Others instructed their own names to be hidden, hoping to cheat death's attention. A strange game with eternity. After he leaves, you sit alone with your wine. Not much of it, just enough to dull the sharp edges of silence. The comet is gone now. Just gone. People are calling it a good omen. You're not sure. You walk the palace halls. They echo more now. Fewer servants, fewer laughs. The boy is asleep, frog under one arm like a sacred talisman. You tuck the linen around him and whisper, "Keep him safe." You're not talking to the frog. You're not sure who you're talking to anymore. The queen finds you later, sitting by the reflecting pool. You don't speak at first. Then she says, "When did we get old?" You don't answer, because you don't feel old. You feel ending, as if something has curled around the edges of your life and started gently folding it in. She leans on your shoulder. "Your tomb will be beautiful." You nod. "It's too much." "Not enough," she replies. You watch the stars, not for omens, just for company. And for the first time, you think of death not as punishment or passage, but as pausa, a soft moment before something new. A hallway, maybe. Empty, silent, and full of echoes not yet spoken. The final morning arrives like any other. Quiet, dusty, too warm. You rise before the servants. The linen sheets cling to your legs, reluctant to let go. You push them aside gently. You dress without help today's simple robe. Unpainted face, no jewelry. Not because there's no ceremony, but because you want none. There's a strange stillness in the palace. No clanging of bronze dishes, no clipped footsteps on the stone. Even the parrots seem to have taken a vow of silence. The walls themselves feel like they're holding their breath. You walk the halls one last time, past the mural of your coronation, your younger face so serious, so square-jawed, flanked by gods who now feel more like distant cousins than cosmic allies. Past the colonnades, where the queen once danced during the Festival of the Lotus, petals sticking to her sandals, the crowd in awe. Past the courtyard, where your son built miniature temples from mud and scolded frogs for ignoring sacred boundaries. All these places, still here, youth the only thing fading. Outside, the Nile moves without care. Boats drift by like thoughts unspoken. Somewhere, fishermen cast nets, children shout, merchants argue over onion prices. The world forgets you, in real time, and it's okay. You call your son to you. He's taller now. His tunic hangs unevenly, hair slicked down by someone trying too hard to impress you. He bows, but you wave him off. "Sit," you say. He does. You give him the crook and flail, the symbols of rulership. One smooth, one barbed. "Do you know the difference?" you ask. He frowns. The crook guides. The flail warns. You nod. "But what if they stop listening?" he asks. You pose. "Then listen harder," you say. He takes them, hands trembling just enough to remind you he's still a child. You send him away with a hug that lingers. The queen is next. She sits beside you by the reflecting pool. Neither of you says goodbye. You've said it too many times before. In glances, in decisions, in the way your hands touched only lightly last night beneath the sheets. She kisses your forehead. No tears. She was never one for softness, except with the boy. You watch her leave. The final ceremony is private. You requested that. No crowd, no incense. Just you, your architect, and 6 workers. You walk into the tomb while it's still incomplete, the air inside sharp with the scent of fresh stone. You inspect the burial chamber. It's smaller than you'd imagined. Somehow, that comforts you. No room for statues, just enough for you, a sarcophagus and a few jars. The architect shows you the hidden passage, the false shaft, the door that leads nowhere. You nod, approve. Then you turn to the niche where your name was supposed to be carved. It's blank, as requested. You stand there for a while, not sad, not afraid, just kia. Then you climb into the sarcophagus, not for death, not yet, but to feel it, to own it. You lie still, arms crossed, eyes open, stone above, no sky, no sound, and for the first time in your life, you rest. And now, dear listener, the last torch has dimmed, the last scroll has been rolled, the last reed flute has gone silent in the night breeze. The Nile flows on, uncaring, eternal just as it always has. You've walked through chambers of gold and halls of dust. You've felt the ache of power pressed against your shoulders like sandstone. You've worn the crowns, whispered the prayers, stared down both betrayal and prophecy. And through it all, you've seen the man behind the god, and the god behind the man. because ruling isn't about thrones or titles or names etched in stone. It's about weight, the weight of eyes, of legacy, of silence and echoes. But it's over now. The echoes fade, the masks come off, the tomb is cool and still and kind. The crocodile dreams no more. So breathe slowly. Let the dust settle behind your eyes. Let the torches burn out without worry. Let the wind hum low through the reeds, like a lullaby from 1,000 years ago. You are safe here. No scrolls to sign, no whispers to chase, no gods to please. Just stillness, and stars, and a little frog at the foot of your bed, blinking softly in the quiet. Sleep well, Pharaoh.